President, council members, and participants, we are now live.
Thank you, and good morning to all. We're going to get started. First, I'd like to thank you all for chiming in today, for watching our public hearing. But before we begin the public hearing, I will make the following announcement. Due to the continuing threat to public health from COVID-19, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearing of council committees are published in the Daily News, the Inquirer, the Legal Intelligencer. Prior to the hearings, it can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come. Mr. McDermott, will you please call the roll to take attendance? The members that are in attendance, please say a couple of words to make sure that your image is displayed on the screen. Mr. McDermott, please call the roll.
Councilmember Bass. Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember Dom.
Morning, Council President, colleagues, and City of Philadelphia. Present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Gautier.
Good morning, Council President and colleagues in Philadelphia.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. Councilmember Green.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, attendees. I am present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Gim.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember O'Neill.
Good morning, everyone.
Councilmember O. Councilmember Parker.
Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Quinones Sanchez.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, Council. I'm present.
Good morning.
Councilmember Squilla.
Good morning, Council President and colleagues present.
Councilmember Thomas.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, colleagues. I'm present.
Good morning.
And Council President Clark.
And good morning to you all. The quorum of the committee is present, and the hearing is now called to order. This is the continued public hearing of the Committee as a whole regarding bills number 220, 284, 220, 285, 220, 286, 220, 287, 220, 288, 220, 240, and resolution number 220, 300. Mr. McDermott, please read the titles of the bills and the resolution.
Bill number 220284, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2023 to 2028 inclusive. Bill number 220285, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2023 capital budget. Bill number 220286, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2023. Bill number 220287, an ordinance amending section 10001 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Fees of Commissioner of Records to increase certain fees for the recording of deeds and mortgages and related documents under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220288, an ordinance amending section 191403 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Imposition of Tax by creating a Philadelphia County Demolition Fund to increase and encourage economic development by demolishing blighted properties within the city, imposing a related fee for recorded documents and related items, and making technical changes, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220240, an ordinance substantially increasing the budget and number of areas and neighborhoods around the city serviced by the Community Life Improvement Program to improve the health, safety, and cleanliness of every neighborhood and enhance the quality of life for all residents. And resolution number 220300, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2023 through 2027 and incorporating revised changes with respects to fiscal year 2023, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority. The authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement authorized by an ordinance of this Council approved by the Mayor on January 3rd, 1992 by and between the City and the authority.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. Today, we continue the public hearing of the committee as a whole to consider the bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal 2023, a capital program, and a forward-looking capital program for fiscal 2023 through fiscal 2028. Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that the public hearing is being recorded, and because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. So by continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available on Microsoft's Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized in order to comply with the Sunshine Act. The chat feature must only be used for that particular purpose. This morning, we will hear testimony from the Register of Wills and the City Controller. This afternoon, we will hear testimony from the Department of License and Inspection and the Water Department. Mr. McDermott, the first person to testify is
Register of Wills, Tracy Gordon.
Good morning, Ms. Gordon.
Good morning,
Register.
Council Presidents. How are you?
I'm great. Just to state your name for the record, and then you can please proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Tracy Gordon. I am the Registrar of Wills here in the city of Philadelphia and clerk of Orphans Court. Good morning to you, Mr. President, and members of the City Council. I am Tracy Gordon, Registrar of Wills and clerk of Orphans Court. Joining me today are Emilio Di Gregoria of Government Affairs and Errol Dica, Finance Director. I also have my solicitors on if you have any legal questions. I'm pleased to provide testimony on Register of Wills Fiscal Year 2023 operating budget. The Fiscal 23 budget general fund request for Register of Wills is $4.6 million, a little under $4.7 million. With the additional funding requests, the Register of Wills Department plans for Fiscal Year 23 are to introduce a probate deferment initiative legal unit, continue the public outreach for the probate deferment program, digitize the historic archives, and replace the current legacy system. Thank you for your continued support and consideration of this request. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Madam Register. First, let me recognize Councilwoman Brooks and Councilman O are present for the record. Thank you. Let's had a couple of questions to ask you. I just looking in your budget detail, and I know this is something that is near and dear to your heart. I heard you talk about it basically all the time. Understanding this significant. In your Tangled Title Initiative, there's a $60,000 decrease in the Tangled Title Initiative. Can you tell me why that is, particularly given the level of significance that you have placed on that?
A $60,000 decrease?
Yeah.
Errol, can you speak to that?
Good morning, President Clark. I'm Errol Dica, Finance Director.
Page three of the budget detail.
Yes, so the $60,000 was one-year funding that was issued by the administration. That was for the inception of the program that the register placed. So it's just one-year funding. So it's not a continuous funding for the upcoming fiscal years. So the administration kind of took it away after FY2022.
Was it like one-year funding as a part of a compromise or an agreement, or was one-year funding that you all wish could have been multi-year funding?
Well, we would have liked to be multi-year funding, but it was a one-year funding because it was the initiation of the PDI program outreach. So
it was a pilot program. It was a pilot program that, we asked for the additional funding because we wanted to test the program to see if, just prove to you all that there needs to be really close attention to this problem here in the city of Philadelphia. So we need, and then we provided other additional things in our budget, because I tell you this, Council President, and I feel this in my heart. If we could solve this Tangled Title program, we would free up $1.1 billion worth of debt capital. We would change history in Philadelphia, because people will be able to have access to their generational wealth. And those are primary homes that are in black and brown neighborhoods. Your neighborhood, my neighborhood, all up through the map you will see, and I send it to you all. People do not own their properties. They're not going to be able to survive. They're not going to thrive. They're definitely not thriving, but they're not going to survive. If we really pay, and I appreciate every last one of you all who approved my last budget and approved that $60,000 increase. I just real quick, we deferred an average probate fee of $500 per family. They're mainly, the PDI applications have mainly come from District 4, Curtis Jones District, District 7, Maria Quinona Sanchez. We have also had applicants from District 8, Cindy Bass, Sherelle Parker, and 10, Brian O'Neill. We are looking to expand these services by adding a Tangled Title Focus Unit for additional positions, because if they don't, time is not on their side. Every time somebody dies that is in that family tree, it's going to be harder for them to be able to get access to the title of the property, which means all the money that y'all put it into, and thank God for you all for putting on that money that in the basic system repair, they don't qualify for it, Council President. People that are living in your districts really need to get that money, and we can talk about that another time. We have a solution on that, but I just wanted to let you know that it is a serious problem here in Philadelphia.
All right. Ms. Waxman, I think you raised your hand. I saw on the screen. Marissa Waxman, budget. Yeah. Did you want to respond to that question?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I was listening on the channel 64, so a delay, so you might have actually hit it, but you were asking about the $60,000 reduction for Tangled Title. And that was one-time money, but what we did was add $400,000 for Tangled Title and for the digital archives. So it is really what it is a net increase of $340. But that's just the 60 came out, 400 went in. So there was a real intention from the administration not to reduce it, but to actually beef it up and expand it. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear on a technical basis.
I understand why you jumped on. Trust me.
All right, I'll maybe just sit here quietly.
Thank you for the administration, because they have really been, kind to us with in reference to the Tangled Title and just getting us the assistance we need. It's a little short, but we'll talk about that too as well. I send you all a letter, a notification today in your email, and when you all get time, it goes into the explanation of the plans that I have in reference to the Tangled Title. Right. Somebody still has their mic on, so it's a delay. Marissa, your mic is on.
Yeah, whoever is talking, they need to you're not speaking. Can you please mute yourself?
And I think I can repeat the last part. Is we appreciate the funding that came from the administration, and we asking for a little bit more.
Okay. Since we're on that, tell me how you have worked with the Department of Records as it relates. I know that the Department of Records was engaged in that process also. What's the relationship between you guys, Department of Record, and Register as it relates to Tangled Title?
So most people in Philadelphia, most of the citizens, they don't know its differences of offices, because my office is the office you come to get the paperwork to take over to the Recorder of Deeds. So our offices are elected. That Recorder of Deeds is a appointed position, and the attorney over there is Commissioner Jim Leonard. And from the onset of the Tangled Title initiative that we've done in our office, he has partnered with us, and where we defer the fees on the average I told you of $500, he is waiving the fees when they come over to them. So we untangled 14 titles, without any dedicated budget, but that's 14 families, and your districts, and we can help more. But what the Recorder of Deeds does is, once you get the short certificate, because people don't understand the probate process. For some reason, the citizens of Philadelphia don't understand the rules and the roles of the Register of Wills, and that's very dangerous because when you own property, there is certain legal procedures that you have to take place in order for your family to be able to inherit your property. And the people in Philadelphia who owned homes hadn't been doing that, and they've been thinking that it's an automatic transfer, Council President. And as a result of that, in those areas of West Philly, North Philly, Germantown, Lower Northeast, and scattered around and some of the other all areas of Philadelphia, the people are sitting in there and they can't even get homeowners insurance, which is a safety issue. It's a safety issue to live next door to somebody who don't have the HOA plan. If a fire happens, how many of us in the city will be able to rebuild? In the meantime, you still got to live next door to them. So that's what's happening in the city of Philadelphia, and that's the way the urgency was. I'm saying that right now, we as a body, you all had that authority to be able to help you all get these notifications to the people. Which, by the way, shout out to the city of Philadelphia. The water department just sent out a brochure to 300,000 Philadelphians, homeowners, or think they homeowners, because the water is where they finally know they have a problem. So that's going out this week. So open your water bill and you'll see a leaflet where it's telling them who the Register of Wills is and who the Recorder of Deeds, and we have a program that you can come and we'll get you free legal assistance to help you and your family get that property in somebody's legal name.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Register. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Thomas.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, everybody. Couple questions. I had some questions that I wanted answered ahead of time, but I think the Register of Wills testimony just created some more questions for me. So I just want to get some clarity on a couple things. So the Register of Wills said that they were able to untangle 14 titles. The 14 titles that they were able to untangle, is that due to the program that we spent about $60,000 on? Am I understanding that this pilot program that we spent $60,000 put us in a position to untangle 14 titles?
No. The $60,000 gave us the opportunity to promote a program that could potentially help 10,000 families in the city of Philadelphia to get property that they believe they own and probably have inherited it, but legally they can't do anything with it. So the $60,000 allowed the Register of Wills during a pandemic to get the information out. It just so happened that some people applied for the position, and those people that applied for the program, some of which, they went and got other legal advice because the program is income based. But we're just telling you that in the process of not even having funding for that particular unit, we untangled 14 families' houses. Errol, you can Earl, you can also add something to it, so maybe you can help our council person understand some numbers.
Good morning. So the $60,000 for public outreach. So technically, what we did, we worked close with procurement and the OEO office to see a couple vendors that did some sort of productions related to PDI and advertisement boosting through the social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, so they can get the word out there in the communities that, the Register of Wills has the probate deferment program, and, we are offering this assistance to the public to untangle their titles.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the $60,000 was spent on marketing and advertising so people can understand the programs that you're offering. It wasn't, I'm just confused because in your testimony to the council president, you said the $60,000 was a one-time fee to be able to provide the items that you needed to start the pilot program. Now you're telling us that the $60,000 was spent.
And the items that I needed is I needed items for advertisement. I need to get the message out. It was
So
COVID.
we don't need that. We don't need advertising dollars anymore. Is basically what you're saying.
No, I didn't say that. You said that.
All right, I'm going to move on from this line of questioning because this is confusing, and I'm not quite sure exactly what direction we're going in with some of this stuff. The digital archive. So right now you're asking for an increase in funding to address some of the issues related to digital archives. Is that correct?
Well,
Errol,
the digital archives is it's a project that has been placed on hold for a long time. Currently, our records are backdated from the 1700s, and the condition and the shape of that, can no longer be sustained. So we need money to start digitizing files because as last, we had a hurricane last time, and we really got lucky technically with the files. So and if another flood or a fire had to happen, these records would be gone. They're single copies from the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s. So we need money to digitize the files.
So you're asking for an increase based on the numbers that the administration have you at to be able to digitize the files. Is that what you're saying?
So the administration gave us some funding, but we asked for more money up front.
How much more are you asking for?
Oh, in class 200, we asked for digitizing. We asked $250,000 just for digitizing.
And this is different than the time you guys came to us in the appropriations committee and asked for a transfer in money to be able to address other issues as well. This is a different request than that.
The transfer of money in December was for, I believe, class 100. I have to go back and check the information. I don't have it in front of me, but we asked the administration in the previous fiscal year as well for digitizing records. We also have applied through the CAO for funding to work with the city to digitize records. So this year we were able to secure some funding from the administration, like about $400,000 in class 200. You have the $60,000 decrease for PDI. So the money is spread for.
Hey Kelly, I'm in budget hearings. I will call you around.
Councilman Jones.
Yes,
Councilman
and let me
gotta mute
add.
yourself.
Hold on.
Okay, let me also add
Folks, register. Hold on 1 second. Folks.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Somebody got their stuff on.
Let me handle that.
Okay.
Folks, please make sure that you're muted when you're not speaking. We keep having way too many interruptions. Individuals not being adequately muted. Register, please proceed. I'm sorry.
Okay. So, if you can, Errol, can you talk about our fiscal 2022 budget as far as our revenue, our expenses? I hope Marissa will tell them how much money we brought in to the city. Could you go over real quick with that?
I'm sorry.
I would like, excuse me, I would like to. Yeah, I apologize to you.
Yeah, no, I'm apologizing because my time is limited, so I don't want my time being wasted with that type of testimony because that's not what I'm asking.
That's wasted to you, and all due respect to you, Council President Darrell. I would ask you to. I asked for some respect and not getting cut off. This is a hearing. I didn't know that we had to rush around another council person's schedule. I'm scheduled to speak in testimony. So, I mean, this is, seem like I'm being harassed. It seems like I'm being harassed. Okay? Seems like I'm being harassed, and it's not fair. I treat y'all with respect, Council President. I've always came in here respectful. I send you all the paperwork, and right now, can I take 5 minutes to talk to my staff? Because I feel like I'm being harassed publicly.
Would you like to have a 5-minute recess? Is what you're saying?
I'm asking you permission for that so I can talk to my staff. Please. I ask everybody that I'm not trying to disrespect Council President Isaiah Thomas, but the line of fire questions, and I'm not sensitive. I'm just saying that we don't need to answer a catch-22 question. You want to ask us questions, we should be allowed to answer the questions in a respectful manner that somebody that's been elected, just like everybody here has been elected. I would like to be able to talk, and I would like not to be having fiery questions at me like I'm not on the stand here.
All right. Well, this is what I'm going to do.
Well, we can move forward. I don't have to have the 5 breaks, but I just said there needs to be some law and order.
Register.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
We're running the budget hearing. All right.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to give you a 5-minute recess so you can collect yourself or the staff or whatever it is you want to do. But understanding that members of this council have the right and the authority and the jurisdiction to ask questions of individuals that are coming in to testify. If the individuals choose not to answer that question, that's their right. But you can't tell us how to run the budget hearing.
I'm not asking you how to run it. I'm asking you to talk to me in a respectful manner. That's all.
You're asking me, you're telling us how we should conduct the hearing.
Well, I apologize.
If I want to answer the question, then you have that right not to answer the question, but you can't tell us how to run our hearing. All right, okay. So let's take a 5-minute break. Quick 5-minute recess. You do what you need to do in that 5 minutes. We'll be right back. Modesto, 5 minutes, and we'll be right back. Thank you very much, Modesto. We're going to get started again after a brief recess. We're going to go back to Councilman Thomas. Councilman, I know you had a couple of additional questions, so please proceed with your questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Council President. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I know that I was already coming to the end of my time, and I just want to provide some clarity. When I say my time, I'm not speaking to the fact that I'm not going to be here for the budget hearing the entire day. For those in the public audience who don't know, council members are limited to 7 minutes per round. And as we go through rounds, we're limited in the amount of time because there's so many council members who have to answer questions. So I just wanted to provide clarity about that. So I do apologize. When I was asking for an expedited answer, it was because I didn't want to waste the time that I have for this round of questions. And anybody who felt like I'm not being respectful or anything of that capacity, I just want to put it out there that that's not the intent. Our police commissioner yesterday, Commissioner Outlaw, stood and answered questions for, I would estimate, about 4 hours. And at no time, and some of those questions weren't easy. We have a lot of issues that we're facing in the city of Philadelphia. And at no time did it turn into anything that was inappropriate. So I just want to put that out there and apologize for that and just make sure folks in the listener audience know that I will be here for the entire session today, just like I was yesterday, just like I've been at every budget hearing that we've had. With that being said, Council President, I'm just going to tee myself up for the second round. I'm going to allow my colleagues to go ahead and ask questions that they have. And I'll just tee myself up in a chat feature for the second round because I think I've taken a lot of time and I know other council members have questions. So I'll come back for the second round. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Don.
Thank you, Council President, and good morning, Register Gordon.
Good morning, Councilman.
First of all, we do want to thank you for all the work you've been doing. I've seen it, and very productive, and it's very much needed in our city. Having said that, though, I don't really have a question. I have a comment. And in listening to these budget hearings and listening to the issues of the city, and especially the Tangled titles and this amount of money that's tied up, that's a catastrophe. I mean, it's really horrible. But the more I think about it, the more I think that education is a big part of this whole process, not just for the adults, but imagine if we had, what I know you support, teaching our schools different things like financial literacy that I've talked about, tech and entrepreneurship from K through 12. Just close your eyes and picture a city that has that mandatory for the next 15 or 20 years and think about the difference we would have in the population of this city and the residents' knowledge. It's huge. And I'm saying that because all these Tangled titles, all these issues come from a lack of knowledge. And the more we can educate our young people, the more we can avoid this in the long term. This goes beyond any elections that occur the next 10 or 15 years. This is a 20-year program, but it's something that we should do as a city. And having shared that with you, I know that you've been doing a lot of work in the Tangled title area, and I know you've been getting out there and doing all kinds of events. Are you doing anything? Can you share with us in the financial literacy? Have you done? I know you've done some events. Can you just share with me some of the things you've been doing there?
Yes, thank you for asking, and thank you. You always, you've been saying that since you've been the council person about the financial literacy and lack thereof in our community. So we started a Plan, Prepare, Protect educational tour. That's been a huge success. We bring every Thursday, and we do it Facebook Live, and primarily because of COVID, we had to do everything through the internet. And so we talk to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of citizens, bringing on experts to teach them financial literacy, to teach them the importance of how to make a will, the difference between the offices and the register of wills and the recorder of deeds. We also partnered with Councilwoman Kathy Gilmore Richardson. She has been very instrumental in getting the message out, and she introduced an all y'all pass legislation to include an estate preparation guide for families to address the estates of their loved ones after passing. So we must continue to find ways to get the word out. Yesterday, I talked to the Board of Realtors Association, and now they are going to include our leaflet. We send them a digitized leaflet, so when they sell a property, our digitized flyer will go in there about the importance of make a will and how to contact our offices. We partner with the Bar Association. They're getting ready to put out a resolution for Tangled titles because it's unique to the county of Philly. We out of all the 67 counties, they don't have that financial literacy deficit in those other counties, and so we are working with the Bar Association to present a resolution. And we are in the second season of filming a series called Register Reacts, and we use pop culture to educate people about, why it's important to plan your state. We just finished commercials and one in Spanish. Thanks, Louise. We have a Hispanic employee there that helped direct a Spanish commercial for the Spanish community, because a lot of Tangled titles is in that North Philadelphia area, and she helped direct and translate so we could have commercials that are getting ready to come out. And we also are continuing to provide city services. We have educated your entire council staff, the entire state legislative staff, the entire state senator staff, all the Congress people. We educated and gave them a curriculum on understanding our role here, and gave everybody in those offices direct access to us.
Okay, that's very comprehensive, so thank you. Just one comment. You might want to also reach out to all the title company associations. Okay. Because the title companies deal with the transfer of deeds, and at every closing and settlement sheet, maybe they could attach your information just so people have it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman Dunn.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, let me kind of get this teed up correctly. I think we have Councilwoman Parker next, and I believe Councilman Jones had also gotten in the queue. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you so very much, Mr. President. I apologize for my camera being off. I'm having technical difficulty today. But Madam Register Gordon, I want to start the way that I have started every departmental budget hearing, and that is I want to give some thank yous. I want to thank you and your team for the intergovernmental cooperation that you have exhibited. I was happy to hear in your response to Council President Clark, you were sort of summarizing for us the work and partnership between the Recorder of Deeds, Jim Leonard, and between the work that both the Office of the Recorder of Deeds and the Register of Wills. I just want to argue that it has literally been unprecedented here in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you to both of you. And I also have to give a huge thanks to Sharon Wilson. When I tell you a yeoman's job on the clock and off the clock, Madam Register, she has always made herself available. And I wanted to say thank you. With that being said, Madam Register, thank you for referencing Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson, who is touched by this issue in a very personal way, and it became priority for her, and particularly when she was working on that estate preparation guide legislation. So thank you for just acknowledging that. I know the issue of tangled titles, it is something that I have been working to educate the public about, connecting citizens to Philly VIP, to CLS, and anyone else we could think of, madam, even before you were elected when I was in the state house, because we understood that the average Philadelphian, even in those districts, and I was listening to you when you noted those districts that were most impacted and those who had taken advantage of the opportunity to untangle a title, when you talked about the 4th, 7th, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, it is no surprise that in districts that have an aging population, particularly in Black and brown communities, an aging population and a high rate of home ownership, that these issues become extremely important. And I will tell you, when we first started working on this issue register, people were not even thinking about the fact that everyone didn't have a lawyer on retainer to have, developed, a last will and testament, and had gone through the process of transferring property, that probate process that you talked about. So I just want to thank you. And we've been talking about the need for marketing, right, with recruitment strategies, not just here in the Philadelphia Police Department, but throughout government, where we're competing with different regions in the private sector to recruit people. But here you were, in an effort to use technology, and I'm a dinosaur, so when you use the videos and I think it was movies to connect people with understanding it, I would have never thought about anything like that, because I'm not a technically savvy person. I had to depend on staff for that. So just your use of technology and your knowing that you had to spend money to market the service and to educate people about it. So I wanted to get all of that on the record. Now what I want you to do is tell me, if you will, 2 questions. One, how much funding is dedicated to that community outreach in your department that Councilmember Dom, he acknowledges like I acknowledge. Thank you, Councilmember Dom, because we have never had that much outreach before, being proactive. And with the tangled titles, tell us, if you will, because again, Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson, myself, so many others advocated for these dollars. How is the Neighborhood Preservation Initiative funding going to further advance your office's efforts as it relates to addressing this issue of tangled titles and building wealth and transferring wealth from generation to generation amongst all Philadelphians? And I'll go on mute, Madam Register, and listen. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. I do want to say you were one of the first offices that I came to introduce you to the PDI Probate Deferment Initiative, and you said, listen, Register, this has to help the middle income folks as well. And I will tell you, 4 of those tangled titles that we assisted came out of Curtis Jones area, Councilman Curtis Jones area, and they were middle income. They wasn't all just, so we heard you and we upped that threshold. And even if they're above the threshold, we still send them to legal agencies to get the consultation. So we still are giving free legal consultation. Some of these titles take $5,000 or more to untangle. That's why I was telling Council President Clark that time is not on their side. Every time somebody dies, it's going to get more complicated and it's going to be harder to untangle. But I will let Earl deflect to my finance director, and he can answer that question for you, Councilwoman. Thank you, too.
Thank you.
Good morning, Councilwoman. I'm Earl Dica, Finance Director. So for community outreach for FY23, we're dedicating $120,000 that will help us reach further into the communities, outlaying the benefits of our program. We also asked for Class 100 for about 5 positions for the PDI unit to dedicate a legal team to address the PDI related issues for the initiative that the register has. So technically about 300,000+.
Okay, so
just the PDI.
just for to be so 5 positions and then a $120,000 to further educate and connect people. Thank you so very much for that clarity. I'm going to close by saying, Madam Register, thank you also for just putting on the record the impact that eligibility requirements for many programs offered by the city have on homeowners in our city. Because I get extremely frustrated. The council president and I, we've had this conversation quite often. I've watched people pit what we call the have-nots versus those who have just a little bit. And they're not rich, but they usually make a nickel over the income eligibility guidelines. So people say, oh, they don't need help, but they're not thinking about the fact that they're retired, that they're older, that now there's more medications and challenging healthcare issues. So thank you for acknowledging that those people who also contribute and have contributed to Philadelphia's tax base consistently, even before we start realizing of the growth that we have. Thank you for acknowledging that those people deserve to access this program as well. Thank you so very much, Mr. President. And thank you, Madam Register.
And Councilwoman Parker, average heater replacement, and you have to include the flue because the chimney is directly connected to the heater. So, to avoid the carbon monoxide, that's like $5,000. So how many people, even listening here, can go in if their heater breaks and just go into their account?
Right.
And, because you made $1 or $2 over the so-called low income. So we need to examine that too,
right,
because that's the older population. How many of them in your district who own their home?
Right.
And this, if that sewage cracks in that front of their house,
yes,
how many of them could get $7,000? Because you have to get a licensed person to do it.
No, I agree, Madam Register, and what you just affirmed for us is that if you fall in this sort of income bracket, we are what we call you house poor. You own the house, but you can't access the services because of the incomes. And for those people who have a property that they lived in, but they haven't untangled the title and went through the process, they may even be eligible for the programs. But as you stated in your testimony, they can't get homeowners insurance. They can't even qualify for the services that we offer in the city because they haven't tangled those titles. So please stay focused on the work you're doing. And again, Mr. President, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I believe Councilman Jones is in the queue. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Register, for your time and testimony today. I'm not going to reiterate most of what has already been said by my colleagues, but I want to relate to you boots on the ground practical experience of what I'm experiencing in my district and outside of my district. My colleagues fought very hard to deal with rent rebates and moratoriums on evictions. But right now, Philadelphia seems to be in the throes of title wrestling from individuals who believe they have a stake and claim to a house, only to find out that they don't, based on that Tangled title issue. The other day, I get an urgent call from an individual who allowed me to share that experience on speaker, people who were to be removed from a property that they believed through either squatters' rights or through the Tangled title that was their property, showing receipts of investments that they made, but that owner had a piece of paper that said that's his house. And I don't think this is a outlier. I think more and more we're going to see those kinds of title disputes, those types of evictions that are occurring based on investors purchasing of the hood. How do we put ourselves in a position to be able to mediate those kinds of disputes about title without leading to violence? Because this issue wasn't just the kind of dispute you find in court, they were ready to take it to the streets. So, Madam Registrar, give us a guide on what we should be preparing in our respective neighborhoods to do.
We got to fund the program. We got it. We have to, we're asking lawyers to volunteer, and some of them are so technical, we have to make sure we put money in that fund. And you all had a political will to lessen the requirements for the basic system repair. I just found that out because the government, FEMA, the federal government, they lessen the requirements of the home ownership if you could prove that you were living and maintaining that house for years by way of bills. So I wanted to talk to you all about that later. We'll put it in writing that you can at least get so these people can be eligible for the basic system repair while in the process of untangling their title. It is going to get very dangerous because you're talking about displacing not just one person. Sometimes there are families, 3 generations of families in these houses. And what's going to happen is our homeless population is going to go up. The affordable house is the one your family owns. The average person, hardworking person working 2, 3, 4 jobs cannot qualify for for low income housing or first time homeowner. Where's people going to live? If not, they live in their houses. And with the gentrification that's coming and the trickery they're doing, luckily we have a DA over there that is now prosecuting anybody who is trying to steal, people deeds, and now people are starting to be educated to, he started a program over there where you can register that if somebody, inquires about the title to your house, you will get instant notification via email. So we are trying to do all type of things to protect our infrastructure, but right now we are in severe danger of. It just makes me so nervous every day. Is people are going to lose these houses, Councilman, if they don't get them in their names, and we have to fund the program. We have to fund it.
So that was the answer to that. I want to segue. I know we send more money from your office to Harrisburg than we ever see. How much is that again? How much do we send to Harrisburg?
Last fiscal year, 2021, we sent $90.5 million. The year before that, we sent the same. We send between $80 and $100 million every year there, pandemic or not, that we sent them the money. Even when they were closed, we saved millions. We had millions of dollars worth of checks stacked up because they closed and we were open. So by the time they opened, they were so backlogged from checks from Philadelphia, they had to hire more people.
So we, once again, Mr. President, send money to Harrisburg, and on average, from taxpayers to entities like the Register of Wills, we send $1, we get 73 cents back. We send $1, they give us back 73 cents worth of services, which, let them tell it, we're the constant drain on the budget. By way of
you ride on that turnpike, you see all our taxes is helping preserve parks, highways. I guess that's where it's never been an audit, but I don't know. We have been consistent with our inheritance tax, and it could be more if these tangles will, and we would be getting more city revenue taxes because right now those houses it's just they can't improve those houses. After surviving the attack from the redliners, if you look at segregationbydesign.com, it's in the city planning. It will tell you that the redlining that happened during the time that between the 20s and the 60s, there was a concentrated effort in cities like Philadelphia, Chicago. It's called Segregated by Design. The city planning has it in their testimony. And so what happened with the redlining, we weren't able to, improve our homes. And so these are the same homes that people are living in that, people, I guess, didn't trust government. They didn't understand making wills. And you have generations of families right in your neighborhood that are living in a house that they don't own.
I want to segue real quick with the time I have left. How closely do you work with the Historic Commission? And the reason I ask that is that there are so many documents that need to be preserved. They're going to testify to that. So you have the William Penn Charter in your possession, which has got to be priceless. We went and did a tour of the Art Museum to find the first wampum belt that purchased part of Philadelphia from the Lenape Indians. So, I mean, how closely do you, as the Register of Wills, work with the Historic Commission on preservation of documents?
Well, we haven't built a relationship as of yet to them because of COVID, so everybody was closed down. So now that they're starting to open again, we begin a communication, but we have started to do sort of like a self-inventory. We have taken some historic documents, such as the one you mentioned, to actually get preserved because they pretty much can't wait. I'd like you to come for a tour in the marriage department and the marriage records, and I'd like you to see for yourself the condition those books are in. And these are books that you need, you and your family needs. For marriage records, sometimes that they have to prove that they were married or whatever, especially the immigrant population. They have to get their marriage records to send over overseas, and it has to be certified. If you will see the books, they are crumbling right before your eyes. Like, seriously. If I would like for you all to see it, because just us describing it, I can't describe the condition and you have to see it with your own eyes. So the digitization plan is an initial plan that we don't even know how much we have. We know we have it, but we don't know how much we have. So that's where we were with the Historic Society. But I will say, in legislation by law, we cannot do anything to any documents without their approval.
Thank you, Madam Register. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Brooks.
Thank you, Council President. And good morning, Madam Register of Wills. My question is about seniors. I was wondering, how does the community outreach team reach out to seniors? Because they don't rely on the internet, like, for public information. And, just want to make sure that as we talk about the specific population, and I heard your story about the heater, and we've had several calls about that, but I just want to know, how was the outreach done to that particular population?
Okay, so now COVID is just lifting, but we just sent 200 and almost 300,000 pamphlets, leaflets that's going to go in the water bill. They're going to get it this month. Letting them know about programs and how to reach our office. There are a lot of seniors that use social media as well too. We have now started going out to venues physically. We have thousands of flyers that we have been giving out. We go to churches. I have we have an outreach department, first time in its history, where we have a staff of 4. Including a communication director, that are canvassing now. I'm invited to Councilman Curtis Jones boot camp next week. So we are now coming out. You can invite us to anything. Let us know. Send us the flyers, and we'll send you flyers as well. And we also send you all digital copies of all the flyers we have, and we give you all permission to make copies of those flyers, so when your people go out, they can have the information as well.
Okay, thank you. And I also want, do you have a number of viewer Tangled titles that you've been seeing since you've been doing this outreach? Do you have a idea
of the input?
Yeah, of the outcomes from the work that you've been doing over the last couple of years.
Yes, Karima, could you talk to her about that? My solicitor, Karima, she runs our PDI program, attorney Karima Yelverton. I know Sherelle had referred to attorney Sharon Wilson, but our attorney Karima Yelverton has taken her place, and she is now leading the PDI program. Could you tell her answer some of her questions, please, Karima? Thank you.
Oh, we have received a substantial increase in calls related to the PDI program and our outreach, people reaching out. And that's not just people looking eligible for the program. Like a lot of people that call, they just don't know what they were supposed to do because there's a lack of education. And so we recognize that the registered outreach program has been working from the increase of calls alone. And we have a dedicated inbox for emails. Again, we're not receiving those from seniors, though. The calls are mainly coming from seniors, and a lot of them have already probated the estate. They just didn't know what to do next. So we try to assist them with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Good, Councilwoman.
Yes, Council President, that ends my questions.
Thank you. We're going to go to our second round. The chair recognizes Councilman Thomas.
Thank you, Council President. See if we can try this again. First and foremost, how much more money is the Register of Wills office asking based on the mayor's budget proposal compared to the request from the office?
Thank you. Errol, could you give the council person the report, please?
As councilperson, we are asking to fully fund the class 105 positions. So far, we have received 2 additional positions, and we asked for 5. So $125,000 will be the additional funding for class 100.
So you're asking for $125,000 additional in this budget to address staffing issues. My question is the last time we, not the last time, I apologize. One of the times we met previously, one of the questions that I asked this office was how many people have been laid off by the Register of Wills office during the pandemic. So I want to revisit that question. How many people has the Register of Wills office laid off during the pandemic? And if there have been a number of people that have been laid off, why would we need to provide new salary dollars if there have been significant layoffs?
So the $125,000 is to fully fund the PDI legal unit so that we can address probate deferment initiative issues throughout the city of Philadelphia. We were mandated by the administration when the pandemic came around to take a 10% cut. So there was
I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm not referencing the 10% cut that took place. I'm talking about people who were laid off after the 10% cut. We did the 10% cut, and we addressed those issues in 2020. It's my understanding that a significant number of people were laid off after that budget was passed. So I'm wondering how many people were laid off and what the fiscal impact of those people who have been laid off since after we passed that 2020 budget.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can get that report over to you, but go ahead, Aaron. We can get the actual number and report and the data. We can get it over to you before the weekend.
Yes, we will ask our HR unit to provide the number of people that were laid off. But again, to reiterate the point, our budget hasn't been restored in class 100, so technically we have still yet to be fully funded in 100. So we'll provide the data for the later.
Thank you. In our November Appropriations Committee hearing last year, the Register of Wills office came to the Appropriations Committee and asked for a transfer ordinance to be able to address outstanding contractual obligations and other things of that capacity. It is my understanding that the Register of Wills office still have not taken care of some outstanding balances with contractual partners. I'm wondering where are we as it relates to that appropriations hearing that we had last year, and what is the plan to be able to get some of that stuff cleaned up from this office?
So in the register,
Emilio can answer that one.
Okay.
Thank you, Errol.
You're welcome.
Good morning, council members. Councilman Thomas, we have fulfilled all obligations with vendors except one. We asked for additional documentation that supported the work that was conducted. We have not received it to date, but it is our intention, once receiving that documentation, to fulfill that obligation.
I just want to note for the record that that's different than what we were told in the Appropriations Committee last year when we voted to allocate this money. We were told that all of the outstanding balances would be taken care of, but that's not a problem at all. The 14 Tangled titles that the register talked about with the council president in the first line of questioning, can someone explain what that number is? Are you saying that you were able to untangle 14 titles? Can we get more information on the 14 untangled titles?
Amelia, you can finish.
Yeah, I mean, Kareem, I think would be best, but we receive those applications from the public. We work with the nonprofits to conduct the investigation to see how many errors are involved and what's needed to resolve those tangled titles. And through our partnership with the nonprofit, those estates were resolved. Multiple layers need to be addressed, multiple generations. So it's a bit of a legal process, and it requires some form of legal representation to be involved.
So over the last 2 to 3 years, we've untangled 14 titles. Is that the total number of titles that's been untangled? Can you tell me where the 14 number comes from? Is that in a year? Is that in a month?
Go ahead, Karima. Thank you.
The Register's pilot program was started in the first quarter of 2021. So as of today, we have actually had 15 applicants, and 14 of those have been completed. With our partner, our main partner has been Christian Legal Clinics, and Heather Hewlett has provided 13 of those applicants. But again, the calls come into our office and we refer them to the legal services. Now, a lot of the legal services do not have the capacity to handle the amount of cases or the complexity of cases. We have calls that we have received that are still sitting because we do not have attorneys to handle them because they are complicated and take a lot of time. So that is part of our effort to try to increase the legal representation that we have access to make the number grow. Again, that was a pilot program with a small amount of resources behind it. But if we have more resources and more legal services, we could get more done.
So approximately how many tangles do you untitle? Approximately how many tangled titles do you address in a year?
So it has been only 1 year with minimal outreach effort, and we have done 15 applications.
So if my memory serves me correctly, it's been communicated that we have over 10,000 tangled titles, and I'm understanding that this is one of your signature programs. And you've addressed 15 tangled titles?
Councilperson Thomas, yes, because it is a complex issue and it requires time and effort. There are cases that are in the works that are long, and that's why they are not included in these statistics. But again, we have cases that are outstanding because there's so many layers. There are 4 and 5 generations that need to be probated before we can get where we need to be.
And that takes legal expertise. We need attorneys. Some of the programs that are funded to assist in legal assistance, they do not have the capacity. They're not. It's not our job to untangle the title. What we're trying to do is, I started a program just to address people who could not afford the fees. So my contribution to assisting in this problem was to make sure that we would not we would defer their fees, and then we partnered with Jim Leonard, so he waived the fees. The cost per tangled title, you can't put a cost or a time. It's not like, okay, you need to do, it says it's 10,000 of them, you need to do 1,000 a year. You cannot put a time constraint, a cost constraint, because you don't know how many layers. A lot of the tangled titles, you can't it's not just one generation, it's 5 generations. That means you have to go find people that are in jail, notify all their kids, get renunciations from layers and layers and layers. We need attorneys. It's never going to be a lot unless we fund the program. That's why we're here. We're here to primarily, my job as the Registrar of Wills is to validate the wills, collect the inheritance tax, probate estates, issue marriage licenses. I have taken an initiative because the city right now, we are in the process of our citizens losing their property. So we're trying to get the legal help to them, Councilman. So it's not, you can't measure it like that because you don't know each house, each property has problems, and it's going to cost a lot of money for the attorneys. That we need money to be funded so attorneys will be able to get paid because they are not going to volunteer for all this. So that's why we were asking for the additional funding. So when we notify people about the danger of losing their property and we get the influx of calls, we need to be able to accommodate them so they won't be frustrated and say that elected officials aren't doing anything for them. So I need staff. So when that low senior citizen call, we need to have clerks there. I want we also going to have paralegals there so they can answer legal questions because if you're not our staff, we're not there to answer legal questions. And in this problem that we're having there is a very technical legal process, and we need to fund the program. And that's just a part of my office is just a part of it because our office is one they're going to send, or the first office they need to contact so they can at least get the information so they can say, oh wow, I'm in a Tangled title. This is the office that can help me, but now I don't have the money. I don't have the money to get an attorney. So if we want to help these people, we're going to have to find attorneys to do it. That's why we're asking for funding and asking you all to fund the Tangled Title program.
So, Council President, I heard the bell. I'm not. Can I? Do you,
go ahead.
Okay.
I just want to follow up. Go ahead, Councilman.
Okay. So, if we were to provide you with the funding that you're asking for, what type of increase will we see as it relates to number of Tangled titles we would have in a year? I mean, I get it. You it's a complex system, but at the end of the day, on the government side of things, we need quantitative data. So. If we were to provide the 125 to 250,000 extra funding that you're asking for, what could we expect to see as it relates to how this issue would be addressed moving forward, quantitatively?
Well, we can't tell you what you'd expect because it's a new program. We don't know how complex the cases are. I don't know if they're going to be all easy cases that come to us that ask for assistance, all hard cases. We don't know if the legal, because we don't do they can't. They have the legal lawyers have to come and put the application in to us so we can untangle it. So it's hard to put in quantity. Maybe Errol, you can put it in quantity for the council person today.
With all due respect, I just don't think it's appropriate to come to council to ask us for an increase in funding for a particular initiative and not be able to communicate to us what could we expect as it relates to outcomes from that initiative. I don't think that's the most responsible.
May I input again? I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Karima Yelverton, and I'm one of the solicitors for Register Gordon. With the increase in funding, we hope to have a staff unit that would allow us to take the qualitative type data that you're asking for, Councilperson Thomas. We are already compiling spreadsheets indicating the types of calls we're receiving and who are we helping and what they're asking for. Because again, we have seen an increase in calls, but it's a twofold problem. It's a lack of education and a lack of legal resources. So we're addressing the lack of education problem just by each one teach one, getting the word out when we do community events. But it's harder for us to address the legal services problem because we ourselves as Borough cannot provide the legal services. So we are trying to keep track of these issues so we can see how the problem is being addressed. Councilperson Thomas, the Tangled Title Fund has been in existence for more than 20 years to deal with this same issue. This is not a new issue. We've known about it. The Register has just brought more awareness and attention about it. And yes, it's only been 15, but we see that as a change and we see that as growth in the right direction.
Thank you. I appreciate that information. I mean, I'll close out with this. I just think that it's difficult for us to be able to sit here and say that we want to see an increase to provide the legal support that we all know is needed. And I think that that's very important to provide that legal support. But I think that there should be some level of accountability and some level of expectation as it relates to what the outcomes will be if we were to grant those dollars. I do have other questions, but I'm just going to put them in writing. I'm hoping to get some type of follow-up as it relates to the number of people that were laid off during the pandemic. And I'll put the rest of my questions in writing. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank
Chair
you.
recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Register Board.
Councilwoman,
I know that.
your volume is extremely low. Can we turn up the volume?
Can you hear me now?
Much better. Yeah.
Thank you. So I also want to thank you for bringing these issues to light. And I know the legal questions or the legal funding is not directed at you, but Community Legal Service, VIP, and others. And I know there's a lot of work that's being done because there is a commitment by council to fund some of the legal aspect. I wanted to put one of the issues that we're facing as it relates to the cost per case and us getting to a number. Your program, which again, you piloted based on what you had the ability to do. Can you speak to and put on the record why you have to defer fees versus waiving them as the records department does? Because I think it's an important component. And I know Councilman Jones was talking a little bit around the state relationship. Can you put that on the record as to why you have to defer and you cannot waive fees associated with this issue?
Emilio, could you explain?
Yes, Councilmember Sanchez. As an county office, we have court fees that are included in our probate fees that we're obligated to pay for the state and collect. So with that, we devised this program to be more of a bridge to get people to where they need to gain access to an asset. Sometimes the assets are worth, upwards of $200,000, $250,000. So once they gain the access to the asset, they do have the ability to fulfill those obligations that we've given them the opportunity to access. People who are in destitute and cannot pay fees, we do have the former pauperous option, where fees will be totally waived if that is necessary. So we felt that this was a appropriate measure to take when individuals are gaining access to assets.
What is the average cost of some of these state fees associated with this Tangled title issue? What's the average?
Basic estate can start at $400, and a complicated estate with multiple levels of generations can get upwards of $1,000 to $1,500.
Okay, thank you, Council President. I just wanted to put on the record again, this work is going to be increased. There is a real commitment by council to ensure that we can get lawyers to get engaged in this process. But I just want to be clear that some of this fee situation will become a factor as we look to ramp up this activity with our other partners. And we need to make sure that is part of or incorporated if we really do want to tackle that $10,000 number in a very aggressive way. Thank you, Register Gordon, for your work, and I look forward to working with you on these issues. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Just to follow up on that question with respect to the deferment of the various fees as relates to probate, what's the process? And I understand there's a mandate because you are a county office and the state mandate. What's the process and what level of success do you either anticipate or have had in terms of collecting those deferred fees? Who is responsible for that? Is it your department or is it?
Yeah, and we just had a Tangled title. They send us a check. One of our Tangled titles send us a 400 and some change check, and the other ones who we don't put any penalties on them. We don't come after them. Only time we want to collect our fees is if they decide to sell the property. If they're going to live in there generation after generation, we don't come after those fees.
Okay, so it's deferred until the change of title, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know if there was a timeline established by the state to collect those fees.
Okay. No penalties, no interest, anything. If they stay in there forever and pass it down to family, but when it transfers over, then we ask to collect our fees.
Okay, thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Don. You're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Council President. And Madam Registrar, just have some financial questions. I don't know if you want to answer them. Someone from your team may want to answer them. But what we've been hearing from several departments in these hearings are labor shortages across the board. You know, not finding enough people to fill a lot of positions, whether it's police or other departments. We're seeing labor shortages. So I want to make sure I understand your department. You have, is it 50? You're going to have 54 full-time positions. Is that correct?
Currently, we have 69. We were budgeted at 71. We took a cut, a lot of positions due to the pandemic. So right now we are at 71 for FY23. Budgeted at 71 for FY23. We are budgeted at 73 employees. We asked for 5. We only have received 2 so far. So from 71 to 73.
How many vacancies right now?
Vacancies, I don't have that on top of my head, but I can get that to you. I believe there's a couple positions vacant at this point, but we'll check with HR unit and, we'll provide that information.
When you say couple, you talking about 3, 5, 10, any idea?
I believe it's maybe 3 or 2, something like that.
Okay. And then, just to my knowledge is we're asking for more positions, but we currently have vacancies. Wouldn't we be best to try to fill those vacancies before we add more positions?
Yeah, so we are in the process of filling the positions for the units that require those positions. A lot of employees are helping out with the PDI program, but they have their own positions to attend to, and the probate and the marriage. So we need resources. We can't just be pulling resources from one unit to help with this legal where the non-expertise is there.
So the positions that we're asking for the PDI these are technical. They have to be paralegals, attorney. They have to have some legal experience and background. It's it's not just like we just hiring clerks. We were asking to hire another attorney. We're asking to hire paralegals to help with this program with the Tangled titles, and I think the few vacancies that we have is just though that they're not budgeted for a lawyer.
And so the vacancies you have now, of the vacancies you have available, give me in the pecking order of the highest level vacancy you have, for example. What would that be for position?
So
I have to look that up. Yeah, go ahead.
So we had the executive assistant and we had the chief of staff. The funding was dedicated, to hire additional positions and contract increases for, to help the office, to address racial disparities throughout the Register of Wills that was being neglected for generations by the previous administration. So the funding was dedicated towards that. Other vacancies are we had a probate clerk that resigned from her job. She went somewhere else, so we are in the process of hiring that. And we had community outreach jobs that were vacated, so we filled those vacancies technically. So given the level of appropriations that we started the fiscal year with, we were not fully funded, to cover all the vacancies technically.
Let me just make sure I understand the pecking order. Madam Register, you're in charge of the whole department, I would assume, right? And who's underneath you? Are there any of those positions vacant, or are those all filled?
Those are filled.
Well, the positions that are filled are the respective leaderships to the office. We had the staff funding that was technically is the second in charge for the entire Register of Wills. That funding was dedicated to address racial disparities through the office and hire other individuals that
How long has that position been open for?
Well, we have delayed that position for almost 8 months since the previous chief of staff person resigned.
Okay.
From the
Any reason why you would delay that?
To address racial disparities in the office that were neglected through generations, technically.
No, but why would you delay hiring for that? That seems like an important position.
Well, we did interview for the position itself. We just, we didn't find the candidate that would suit that position. So throughout the fiscal year, so no decision was made. So we addressed another issue that was neglected within the office.
Just seems important in today's day and age that that position should be filled. That's my opinion. One last question, or just a comment I want you to think about. And looking at your budget, it looks to me like 92% of your budget is roughly for labor. And my question to you is, who on the staff is looking at technology to determine how we can become more efficient, deliver better service, save money to the residents of the city? Is there someone on your staff that is technology oriented to look at those options?
Yep. Melio?
Yes, Councilman Dom. I'm tasked with the technology side of things for the Register of Wills, and we're working with OIT to kind of formulate new systems, new workflows to better raise the efficiency to our operation. As in our budget, we have allocated money towards the replacing our legacy software system, and with that, we're hoping to have a more efficient workflow process, and for it to coincide directly with the city's imaging database and really have a full-scale modern operation with respect to that.
And have we looked at other cities across the country to figure out best practices?
We have gone to other counties in the state of Pennsylvania to see what kind of operations they're running, and basically with the other counties, each administration upon entering replaces their entire system. The surrounding counties that we went to, our system right now is comparable, if not better, to the systems that are in place. We're lacking on the accessibility side for external customers, e-pay, e-records, which we're introducing in our next fiscal year. So that's the only side we're lacking compared to other counties.
A last question. We are also looking at other cities, I assume, of a size in Philadelphia.
We have looked at the New York counties that are operating, and it's hard to make apples and apples with New York because the population is just so dramatic. Some of the software vendors they deal with, just the maintenance cost is more than our entire allocated budget.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your answers today. Thank you for all the work you're doing, and appreciate it. And that concludes for me. So thank you, Council President.
And Councilman Allen Dunn, you would also be happy to know that we are now doing virtual hearings for the attorneys, which is a cost saving to not only the attorneys but their constituents. Now they're opting because of COVID to hold our hearings, so we're holding them faster, and they're able to not even have to come from out of the counties to have to provide their testimony. So we're doing pretty good in that sense as well.
Okay, thank you. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any additional questions for the register? Don't see any. Register, your team, thank you very much for your testimony. I know there's a couple of items that you need to get back to council members with respect to the request. So as soon as you can get those back to us, the better, so we can deal with the conclusion of our budget process. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your work. Mr. McDermott, next up.
The next witness to testify is City Controller Rebecca Reinhardt.
Very much. And
good afternoon. I guess it's good morning still.
Here to be connected. So with that, I want to thank you for your attendance, and you could just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Great. Thank you, Council President Clark and members of City Council. It's great to be here today. I am City Controller Rebecca Reinhardt, and I'm pleased to provide testimony on the Office of the City Controller's Fiscal 23 operating budget. The City Controller is the fiscal watchdog and chief auditor of the City of Philadelphia and the financial auditor for the school district. The office's mission is to promote the efficient and effective operation of city government so that it can best serve all of its residents. The office seeks to achieve its mission by identifying cost savings, recommending best practices and modernizations, and exposing waste, fraud, and abuse. Under my leadership, the office has completed our charter-mandated audits, including the report on city departments, the city and school district reports on internal controls, the citywide and school district annual comprehensive financial reports, and school district and city single audits, among others. My office also continues to monitor city payments to ensure contractual compliance before payments are issued as required under the charter, and conducts investigations based on tips and in conjunction with law enforcement. Additionally, my office has conducted performance audits, such as our report on the Department of Behavioral Health, and we have released data, analysis, and reports on issues of importance to the people of our projects in our schools. In the coming months, my office will release a special audit of the police department spending, including looking at resource and staff deployment. And my office will also be auditing the medical examiner's office, which will include handling of the remains of the MOVE bombing victims. We expect to release the police spending analysis this June, and the medical examiner's performance audit will be released later this summer. For fiscal 23, the mayor's administration has proposed an operating budget of $10.8 million for my office. This is an increase of $442,960 in Class 100 funding, which covers the cost of the wage increases and bonuses that were given to city employees, all city employees, as well as restores a previous budget cut to fill vacant positions in my office. Over the last year, my office has proudly partnered with members of this body working on gun violence reduction initiatives, quality of life improvements, data releases, and special audits. I want to acknowledge the good work of City Council in fighting for Philadelphians year after year, and I want to thank City Council for providing my office with the necessary funding to complete our duties and live up to our mission. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for your summarized testimony. We appreciate it. We got a couple of questions. In the budget detail, you have listed 135 budgeted positions, and maybe this has been updated, but as of November 2021, you only have 116 positions filled. Can you tell us what that's about? Is it a challenge as it relates to finding individuals, or exactly what's the story with that?
Sure. Part of that is we delayed hiring when we took the budget cut when the pandemic hit, and that was partially restored last year, but not fully restored. But we are also, like many departments across the city, facing hiring challenges. We are hiring and we continue to hire, but we have faced some hiring challenges with our auditor positions, as many other departments have as well.
How are you marketing or soliciting?
Sure.
We had a lengthy conversation with the HR director, primarily discussing being able to hire police and people in corrections. What's your process in trying to get people on board, particularly auditors? So we know that's a somewhat specialized position.
Absolutely. I'll have my first deputy, Kellen White, take this one. We have been putting a lot of emphasis on this.
Madam Controller, it sounded like you was getting ready to say Kellen Winslow. I'm a sports guy, right?
I don't know what happened. I was trying to say Kellen White. I don't know what happened.
It's been a while since he was in the league, so you're dating yourself on that. That's what you're.
Well, Council President, I was named after Kellen Winslow, so there you go. So for our recruiting, this is the emphasis we put on when we first came into the office as an effort to diversify among our auditors. So we expanded the scope of the colleges and universities that we recruit from. So we do all the Philadelphia universities, all the local HBCUs that have auditing programs, and we do outreach to pretty much any place that we feel like is drivable from Philadelphia, so that if there's a student, say, at University of Delaware who might be interested in becoming an auditor, we go that route. We also post our union tests because most of our employees are union, so we do have some people from other departments who apply. What we're finding now with the job market is you have a lot of people who will go through the test, and then they come out the other end, and then as you go through the process, fewer and fewer people show up to the next round, mostly because of the job market. So we're always open to ideas about how to recruit more, but we have changed some of the things that we do to also incentivize our employees to get the needed advanced degrees for promotion, so that some of our supervisory positions that are open, we can more easily backfill with our current stock employees.
Okay. PICA. PICA's scheduled to expire, as you know, in 2023, and still not clear what the status of the legislation in Harrisburg is. We've asked a couple of questions. What's your perspective on the possible either expiration or extension of the PICA legislation?
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of PICA, I mean, PICA provides a lot of good financial tools, and it also, embedded in the PICA legislation, is the 1.5% wage tax, which, as you know, the city's budget is dependent on. So, I mean, I think that after 20 years with PICA oversight, I understand the argument that, you know, maybe we don't need PICA because we should be able to govern ourselves if we have that rigor financially, perhaps through city council, requiring certain multi-year plans. But at the same time, PICA has provided a good oversight and structure. So I think that, to me, the most important thing is to remove the uncertainty. So either if PICA is getting renewed, then it just needs to be renewed as quickly as possible, so that the uncertainty around the city's budget in the out years is mitigated. So that would be my position. I mean, I'm open to more conversation around it. I do know that you know, there's been a lot of talk around the topic. I had a conversation about it yesterday, so I would be happy to talk more about it.
I'm not sure you answered my question.
Sorry,
you
asked
your position?
My position. My position. So my position has evolved somewhat. I think my position started by, I felt a few years ago that we really shouldn't need PICA because we've been with state oversight for 20 years, and you know, we should be about local control. However, if you know, everyone was lined up to get it approved and there was legislation and everything looked like it was moving along, then I'm fine with that. So I really just feel, honestly, it's one of the...
You've not been shy in your public history. I mean, this is like before us, hopefully soon, one way or another, like you said.
Yeah.
If it's going to happen, let's get it over. So you're integral part of this whole conversation around PICA, obviously by virtue of your office. Do you support the extension or do you not support the extension?
I think if
you haven't made up your mind yet, that's an answer.
I can see. I think the important thing is to either get it passed, this bill passed, so that PICA is extended, or we say, okay, we're not going to extend PICA, then we have to extend the 1.5% sales tax through city council, and do the rigor. So honestly, I think the most important thing is to fix the uncertainty around it. So
fix the uncertainty by making a decision.
Yeah. So I'm fine with. I said I'm fine with the legislation.
You're not. You're good with the extension.
Yeah, yes, I'm fine with it. I'm not gonna,
All right,
yes,
that's
I'm fine with
just
it. Yeah. Ideologically, I guess where I stopped a little is because ideologically at the beginning I felt that, the city should be grown up from having oversight ideologically, but I'm fine with the legislation and the extension.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
That was a long answer.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Sorry. I got there.
All right. Parking authority.
Mm-hmm.
In your role, do you believe you have the role to audit the parking authority?
Yes, I have. My office has the ability to audit the on-street parking revenue of the parking authority, which we did a few years ago.
Right. Okay. And if is it by request or because I know at one point there was a conversation around that, and the issue had to do with whether or not there was enough money, who was going to pay for it. And I know in your role as the city controller, you have a budget that allows you to audit. I mean, even us, right? You audit a number of various departments in your role and responsibility. In terms of the parking authority, is any audit of the parking authority's on-street responsibilities, which is done based on the contract, although it's been changed by Harrisburg, it's more of a mandate now, as opposed to a contract with the city. Is it a process or a practice that you do an annual audit or upon request? Exactly, because I know they have new leadership over there, so now maybe we'll get a better sense of what's actually going on over there, because it was difficult to get information from the person that no longer is there.
So the parking authority, there's an issue with and I've said this publicly, with the accountability and transparency around the authority. So we did a special audit. My office did a special audit. The parking authority does have an annual audit done. I felt very strongly that we needed to do that special audit several years ago to take a deep look at how the parking authority compared to other entities with staffing and salaries and operations, given that the money, as you know, excess money goes to the school district after the required amount flows to the city. So we found some significant issues with really lack of accountability, because the parking authority doesn't need to go in front of city council to explain its budget, or the state legislature, and various other things. So those issues are hard to fix because you need the majority. In order to change those things, you need the majority of the board members to vote to give away their power. But my office at any point could say we're going in to conduct another special audit of the on-street operation. And it's there are problems, definitely. I think that will continue until there's more accountability in the structure.
Right. Okay. So you can, if there was a request, or you obviously can do it without any request. But if there was a request to kind of look at the books, particularly since there's new leadership, so we can get an accurate accounting of how much revenue is actually being generated, or if the revenues being generated are causing them to staff up to a level that we never reach that threshold where they actually have to put money in the school district budget, because they never get there. And now they're actually suggesting that the school district actually owes them money, which is pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
So okay, all right.
Yeah, if you want, and if our office is always open to requests from city council, and especially on issues of importance. So if there is a special request, then we could definitely sort of prioritize that request as we go through our planning for the next cycle of audits.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Mr. White, call me on the recruitment side. Call me.
We'll definitely
How
call
are
you,
you?
Councilmember.
Thank you so very much. I just want to acknowledge the good work your office does. It gives a different perspective to operations within the city government. Sometimes, people don't necessarily want to, it's like going to the doctor. Nobody wants to hear some of the news that doctor has, but maybe, just maybe, if we adhere to some of it, we will get healthier. So I look at it that way. One of the areas, and I've had this conversation with your staff, is as chair of public safety and dealing with criminal justice reform and other issues, we need to take a look at the process by which we are doing closure rates within our cases. And I think if we dig down based on the 100 shooter review, which your office was instrumental in providing good information, we'll find that witness protection, witness relocation is an essential part of justice or the lack thereof. Currently, we have to grow that witness protection, witness relocation portion exponentially. We do not have enough safe havens. We do not have enough revenue for all of the potential witnesses and their families that we need to relocate. It would be helpful to us if a pair of fresh eyes or several dozen fresh eyes from your office kind of took a look at that to see how we could do things and what are some of the best practices done in other cities. So I was interested in some type of swap with HUD on witnesses that might be placed in other cities, that we use HUD housing as a base of that relocation effort, and then after a period of time sell the houses and start all over with other houses so that people didn't kind of get used to one house location as a place to deposit witnesses. But I'd like to engage a audit on how we look at closures of cases, just like you would any other production within any other department. To be able to say, how do we deal with that critical issue in a way that makes our citizens safer, and makes those witnesses, those brave witnesses often that come forward, safer.
Absolutely. I think I've heard that fear and that issue has been communicated to me among people that are relocated for maybe a week or two while they're testifying by the DA's office or the managing director's office, but then they're put back in 2 weeks, which doesn't help them in terms of their protection. So I agree that it's definitely something worth considering to look at further, and I would love to talk to you offline about it, about what our office can do.
I mean, it's not like for lack of goodwill that it's not happening. Even the sheriff's office has voluntarily used its staff to kind of go to a place, move a person to a safe haven. And so everybody kind of has the good intention of being a part of it. But I really think we're at a point, if we're going to bring it to scale and actually have an impact on that process, we really need to kind of give it some focused attention.
That makes sense. We need to understand what it would look like if you were to really do it right. That makes sense. Let's definitely talk about that.
The other piece is that we've put a lot of investment into grassroots remedies to address the violence issue. I've always said in my life here in government, if it ain't measured, it ain't managed. And I do, even though I went to public school, I know that's broken English. But it's still true that we have to look at what we're doing and almost in a cost accounting way to see. I couldn't tell you if a program I may like instinctively, intuitively, is actually reducing the level of gunshots in a particular area. Somehow we have to set up a way to look at dollars in, results out. And I just think those two things, both on the other side of the ledger, but still very important, whether we're talking about making witnesses safe so that we can have convictions, or we're talking about reducing the shooters at the other end, both of them kind of balance out what needs to be done in this city. So I would love to have your team take a look at those two aspects of auditing and offer up some suggestions.
Okay, right. Happy to do that. Let's keep talking on it. I'll have my office look at it.
Hey, Kelly, call me. Take care, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Council President, and good afternoon, Madam Controller.
Good afternoon, Councilman Dom.
So I want to follow up on Councilman Jones's questions, and clearly our number one priority in council and the administration and in the city of Philadelphia right now is to reduce the violence and increase public safety in the city. That's really the number one issue by far. And when our council approved the fiscal year 22 budget with increased anti-violence spending, I know your office put together a really good dashboard and documentation that was really helpful in making all of that spending transparent. But for months we've been asking the administration, according to really what, this goes along with what Councilman Jones was referring to provide a similar kind of transparency on the performance goals and outcomes for the council-approved anti-violence spending that went out the door, I guess, in early fiscal year 22. It's imperative, though, as council heads towards our vote on the budget for 23, we know what kinds of investments are having the real impact that Philadelphia residents need. And I will say this, I've looked at other cities across the country are utilizing their academic experts, including Dallas, San Antonio, and others. So to figure this, in fact, Dallas in the last 6 months has cut their serious crime 50% with their academic experts. So to figure this out, we really want to bring in academic experts to help us understand what's working, what's not, how we can make our anti-violence spending more effective. And so that's why actually last week, I wrote you a letter formally requesting the Controller's Office to conduct a performance audit of our anti-violence community expansion grant program with the assistance of an academic expert advisory team. And my question really is that something you can do? Is that a yes or a no? But we really would like it to be a yes, because we think this is the most important thing we have right now.
Okay. Well, thank you, by the way, for sending the letter, and we are going through it right now. So just for a sense of what I know and understand about program evaluation and what is sort of best practice in this field is what you're saying, to use people that are professional, academics or other, but people that are real professional and that analyze the effectiveness of the anti-violence work, or really anything, but anti-violence obviously is so important right now. Evaluate it with rigor to see, is it working or is it not, with the goal of course, to stop funding what isn't working and to scale up what is.
Point of
my
information,
understanding,
Council President. Council President, can I do a point of information? Because I think this is an important conversation.
Yeah, Chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez for point of information.
Yeah, thank you, Controller Reinhardt and Councilman Dom for this. I think it's really important in the context of how we are evaluating things that there's a $3.8 billion Health and Human Services prevention budget, and that if we're going to analyze the new programs, we should do it in the context of also analyzing what we're currently funding. My concern is, and I just want to put it on the record, is we decimated the infrastructure of Black and Brown organizations all throughout the city. And it's going to take us a couple of years, right, to build that administrative back office that they need. And this focus on the new groups without focus on legacy organizations, to me, is very problematic. And it doesn't speak to equity and us really realigning the city and what we're doing as it relates to prevention. So I just want to put that on the record because I keep hearing it. You can't decimate an infrastructure and then build it in 1 year. At the same time, we have historical legacy contract providers who in the prevention space that we haven't said, what's your evidence-based model, right? And what is your return on investment? Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Good point.
Councilwoman, yeah, that was a great point. On the question that Councilman Dom is asking, just on the anti-violence work, what my office needs to do first is get a handle on what the administration is doing. On program evaluation, we're going to probably put a request into the administration first before we move forward with anything. Because really, ideally, this type of program evaluation across all programs, and to Councilmember Sanchez's comment, absolutely everything should be evaluated with rigor, including the legacy spending, which is much bigger, that typically would fall to the mayor's administration. With that said, I share your extreme concern and urgency around this issue of the violence in our city, and whatever my office can do, I want my office to do. So with that, we'll be back in touch in the coming days, Councilman, with your office, but we do want that one step in between, which shouldn't take more than a few weeks, just to go to the administration to see, just to get a sense of where they are, if anywhere, before we move forward. But we'll reach out and be talking to you about it.
And I would just say this, Madam Controller, I'm okay having our academic experts help us in all areas, okay? I think that's the benefit of a city like Philadelphia. We have tremendously smart people in the private sector that could be of assistance to us, and especially our institutions. But if we know already that this is working in other cities, and when I read the Dallas security plan, it was very interesting. I read it about 6 months ago, I think. They talked about Philadelphia in their plan, and they talked about 2011, 2012, 2013. They were talking about focused deterrence and how successful it was in Philadelphia and how they were implementing that in Dallas. And then they had this criminologist from one of the universities, and they engaged the academic experts there. Since April, the article said they've cut their serious crime 50%. And so I'm just thinking that even if we can cut it 25, whatever number we can cut it, it's worthwhile for us to engage people who are probably a lot smarter than we are and can help us.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Controller. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Thomas.
Thank you, Council President. Good morning to our controller and to your entire team. Clearly, I have a little bias, being as though my past work and some of the relationships that I have over there. So I just want to say thank you to you and to your team for all the great work that you do. And thank you for maintaining your composure during some tough questions already. Some really tough issues that we have to deal with. But I thank you for taking the hard positions that you have, especially when we're talking about PICA and things like that, because those are really important issues that will have an impact on the future of our city. I had a number of questions, but my colleagues asked some of them already. So I really don't want to be repetitive, Controller Reinhardt. So just a couple questions that haven't been addressed yet. My first question is around the police audit. Your office announced that you would be doing an audit of the police department. The Commissioner Outlaw was here yesterday for hours communicating the importance of some issues related to her budget. I'm not sure if you heard her testimony. I know you're very busy. But one of the things that I asked her yesterday was around the report that came out around heart and lung. So we received there was an article that was written that talked about the abuse of heart and lung. And while we do want to make sure that we're protecting officers who've been hurt on the job, like any place where we see some things taking place that's not ideal, we want to try to address those as well. So if you could just take a moment to talk about the audit that's going to come from your office to the police department, and specifically what do you envision happening around some of the concerns that's been communicated around heart and lung leave of absences.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Thomas. I appreciate the question. So the heart and lung issues, or really the abuse of heart and lung or injured on duty provisions, is something that my office's audit is looking at right now. And the audit is looking at a whole wide range of issues of how policing is done in Philadelphia, staffing deployment, and also leave usage. So overtime, how, injured on duty, leave abuse, because there definitely is an issue with injured on duty use. I don't want to prejudge the audit by getting into the details, but I will say that I think that it's policing and how it relates to public safety and the feeling of true safety for everyone in our city, I think is one of, if not, the biggest challenge for governments moving forward. And we can't just throw money at it. What we need to do is say, how is it working right now, and what changes need to happen, and then what dollars are needed to make it work in the best way possible. And so that's my goal for this audit of the police department, to really say, how do we change policing? What is needed to ensure true safety, which the police, as I've seen your great work on this topic, the police haven't always instilled a sense of safety in everyone, as you well know. So now I will say with that the police, most people join the police force to protect and to serve. And as a city government, I think one of the biggest challenges for leadership is to say, how do we best support policing to make everyone feel safe? So that is the goal. That is the goal of this audit, and it is anticipated to be out in June of this year.
Point of information, Council President Clark.
Oh, I'm sorry, colleague.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez for point of information.
Again, this is such an important conversation. I don't want to miss this point, particularly because the controller is going to dig deep into this. It was clear in the discussions at the fiscal stability hearing that we had bad actor doctors who were complicit in the work that was doing. How is your audit going to address that? Because for me, that's a theft of services if they have been implicit in some of the abuse that we have seen. And I agree with you. I think most police officers, professional, they want to do a good job. The fact that we haven't sanctioned anybody has really created a morale issue in the police department. And so this audit is hugely important. But what, if anything, it's just like the opioid challenge. Doctors did this. Doctors created the problem that we have in heart and lung. So how are you going to address that in the audit?
Well, that's a great question, and that's a very good question about how to address the specific doctors, which I'm not sure if that will be handled through the audit or if that needs to be handled separately with law enforcement. So that is something, Councilwoman or Councilmember, what I'll do on that is have my investigations unit look into it with my first deputy, and we will get back to you within the next week or so about what we think the next steps are there for that. Because I had the same feeling when reading the newspaper articles around those doctors. So I think that I'm more than happy to sort of dig into that and circle back with you on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council Member, for the indulgence.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And just for the record, Madam Controller, I know you know this, that in your auditing process, if there is anything that may reach to the level of criminality, you have the authority to do referrals to whatever law enforcement entity that you think is the appropriate. So
absolutely. Thank you, Council President, for that, for adding that. We definitely refer to law enforcement whenever there's any indication of criminality or even just question any irregularity that we feel needs to be looked at further. So thank you for adding that.
you're welcome. Councilman Thomas, and we'll put some time back on your clock, sir.
No, so it's fine. I only had one more question. The controller answered two questions in one right there. My remaining question, just for clarity purposes, how much were you asking for as it relates to your budget increase, and what can we expect as it relates to outcomes that will be different from your office if granted the budget increase?
Sure. So the budget increase that's in what was sent over in the mayor's proposed budget already, it's not on top of that, just to make sure that that's clear. But what's already in the mayor's proposed budget is an increase of $429,000, and that is to the wage increases agreed to in the collective bargaining agreements, because the majority of our workforce is unionized, and it's also to replenish the cut we took when the pandemic hit. So that was to allow us to hire up to where we need to be on auditors. So that is to fill our charter mandated auditing provision. We took a cut there, and it couldn't be sustainable to continue that level of cut. So that is being replenished in the cut level.
All right. So just to paraphrase, if I'm understanding correctly, your
Sure.
budget increase of about $430,000 is basically to address staffing issues, if that's correct.
Yes, and wage increases that were agreed to, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President. I appreciate it. Thank you to the Controller's Office and your entire team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Controller, I do have one question. In your testimony on page 14, which was written, thank you again for your summarizing your testimony. You show funding for consultation on city and school district audit. Is this because you'd have a shortage of employees, auditors, or is this something that must be done by an outside auditor? Well, can you explain that, what that's about?
On page, let me just make sure I'm looking at the right page. Is this the money that comes in from the school district? Hold on one second. What?
Page 14 of your testimony.
Okay. I don't have it organized that way. Sorry. Nicole.
So you have
Sorry.
Okay.
Can you just, my office is,
well,
it's not organized that way here, so I apologize.
Showing funding for consultation on city and school district audit. So my question is are you hiring an external auditor, or is this for?
We do hire.
I'm sorry.
Sure. In our budget, we do hire outside auditing firms to assist with special audits that we need done, and that is as part of our office's operations. Is this the tech consult on city and school district audit? Is that
yes.
The $32,000?
Yeah, just want to know what's that for.
Okay, I'll probably need to get back to you on that, I think.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a lot of money, just wondering, because you referenced the fact that you're having difficulty hiring auditors, and if it's to hire external auditing services.
Oh, no. We're not replacing any of our auditors with outside. Like, we're not taking away any unionized or workforce positions and adding consultants. But let me get a little clarity and answer your question in a better way. I think it deserves that. So if you don't mind me getting back to you on that.
That's fine. And
Okay.
as part of that question is, if you're having difficulty, and I know you have a union workforce primarily, if you're having difficulty finding auditors, is your office looking at hiring, contracting with external auditors, since it appears that you may be doing that in this particular instance?
No, we don't. We're not doing that. We
No, I'm not saying you're doing that. Are you having that conversation? If you're having difficulty staffing up because you're not able to get staff for a particular division within your department.
Sure.
Do you do?
I understand your question. So we contract out for subject matter experts. In terms of that, we are low staffed. We are making do with what we have, albeit it's imperfect. So in terms of our staffing level. So for example, we delayed one of our special audits to make sure that we got, with our unionized workforce, that we got the annual financial audit out on time. And we're basically making it work. If that makes sense. We're not at a point where we need to use any contracted auditors to replace the work done in our office.
Okay. And my apologies. It's actually, the information is in your budget detail, not in your testimony. I'm sorry. That's my fault.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
But you'll get back to me on that. Just want to make sure.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Down.
Thank you, Council President. Madam Controller, I just want to follow up from our conversation earlier. And I want to just call to your attention that the Inquirer, Philadelphia Inquirer, recently wrote about the analysis of gun prevention. I think this was in my letter. Funding that basically, in their viewpoint, led to the inescapable conclusion that $65 million in gun violence prevention money is being deployed with no framework in place for determining what works and what fails in the battle to reduce gun violence. And they continued on and said the lack of accountability is not a new problem. And they reported that when the administration created the Office of Violence Prevention in 2017, the administration said it would conduct the first citywide evaluation to gauge the effectiveness of the city's dozens of existing anti-violence efforts. More than 4 years later, I'm quoting from the article, the evaluation isn't completed. 4 years. In 2019, accountability language was included in the Roadmap for Safer Communities. That's 2019, 3 years ago. Yet, as of last week, no such accountability matrix has been designed or implemented. And my question is, why do we have to wait another 3 weeks? This hasn't been done. We know that hasn't been done. It's been 4 years. Why do we need to wait 3 weeks?
Well, I mean, that's from a newspaper article. Before starting any type of review, I feel it's important to go right to the administration and have that dialogue. But again, I share your frustration with the lack of framework and the lack of rigor around any program evaluation here.
Point of information, Council President.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez on point of information.
I just want to make sure that this conversation is in the context that this is not the fault of the groups who are doing like ridiculous work out there, many times without a conformed contract, all the challenges we've had starting this up. So I just want to make sure, because when you hear everybody wants accountability, we got $3 billion in money that we don't necessarily ask for accountability. I want to make sure that when we have this conversation, it is always in the context of we've decimated an infrastructure, we're going to build it up. Some things are going to be good, some things are not going to be that good, and we will learn over the next couple of years. But, you know, it's only $155 million of the $3 billion, and I don't want the groups to feel like who have been waiting patiently for us to conform contracts. You know, they have to hire. We can't ask them to cash flow the work, which is what we've essentially done, Council President. I know you've done a lot of work in this space and you've been upset about the rollout. I just want to make sure that the groups don't feel like it's not that we don't want to hold them accountable and help them set up the structure. If there are challenges with how the administration is rolling this out is one thing, but I don't want any of the groups doing this work to feel like we are coming down on them when some of them just got their contracts. So just for the record, thank you, Council President.
Absolutely. That's a good point in terms of if with any type of program evaluation, it would need to be looked at of were they given actually enough time to show any outcome. And that gets to sort of the speed with which the administration has done this.
I think and I agree with you. I think that the goal here is to reward and provide more funding for those programs that have shown success. And those programs that aren't showing success, given the proper time, we should readjust. That's the goal here. And it's been done across the country with academic experts in other cities. This is not a new thing. Anyway, thank you very much, Madam Controller. Thank you, Council President.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up, I wasn't going to talk about this, but there has actually been, I believe, 2 follow-up meetings with the groups and with the city to discuss the contracts, the rollout, the work, and there's been some very, very substantive dialogue and actually recommendations by the groups that talk about how the program could be worked out, how the dollars, how the invoices, I mean, things to that level of specificity. So they are intimately involved in making sure that this works and that everything is done in the appropriate way. And the groups asked for this. It wasn't like some external entity coming in and said, you got to make these corrections. And they gave us some very significant points and recommendations on how this process can be much more improved, because they understand that this can't just be a one-time thing. You know, we're going to have to continue to do this on an annual basis to make sure that organizations who are out there on the front line, frankly speaking, that want to help with this gun violence issue. But so thank you all for bringing that up. We appreciate it. Thank you, Councilman Thomas, Councilwoman Sanchez. So I don't see any additional questions by members of the committee for this witness. So we are actually on time today, actually ahead of time. Almost don't know what to do. So Controller, I know there are a couple of things that you're going to get back to us on.
Yes.
And the sooner you can get it back to us, the better, so we can, as we move towards the conclusion of the budget process, we're able to, when we get down to the nitty-gritty of negotiating the final outcome of the expenditures that and the appropriation that we put in a final budget document, we'll have all the information that's required.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, colleagues, we are ahead of time. So
I think I'm done.
I guess as a bonus, we should actually keep the second phase of our budget hearings today. We were scheduled to come back at 1:30. I believe L&I and Water is scheduled for that particular time. So we can take a relatively brief recess and we can come back at 1:30 to conclude today's budget hearing. Modesto, we'll be back at 1:30.
Thank you, Council President.